Is there something Congress can do to protect your freedom of speech? Joining us now, retired airborne infantry officer, Florida Congressman Greg Steube. Congressman, what needs to be done, you think?
Hey, good to see you. Yeah, I have a bill that would reform Section 230. You've heard a lot about that over the last couple of years, but long ago, Congress gave these big social media platforms liability protection and prohibited lawsuits against them if they violated your First Amendment rights. And that was a poor decision at the time. And the argument at the time was, well, we'll be sued out of existence. We won't be able to get off the ground. And now those companies know that they can do anything they want to do. Just look at the Twitter jumps that we're getting from Elon Musk right now, censoring conservatives, doing all these type of things that we've known all along, just didn't have the proof. So my bill would reform Section 230. It has a market dominance test, so it would only affect the big guys, not the startups. But if you violate Americans' First Amendment rights, for example, the New York Post Hunter Biden story, the New York Post would have a private cause of action against the platform. And watch how quick these big platforms would change their behavior if they knew that they don't have liability protection anymore.
Well, let's talk about what other platforms are. We're all familiar with Twitter. It's got all the headlines recently, including apparently contact with government officials, intel officials that were talking to them. So let's say that's a given. We can see something may need to be done there. What other platforms are you looking at, and in what way do you think they need to be affected or controlled?
Yeah, it's Google, it's Facebook. They are market dominant, and they're doing the same thing, maybe not as bad, but definitely doing the same thing that Twitter has been doing that we're now getting a lot of information about. When the CEOs before the Judiciary Committee a year or so ago, I specifically asked them if they were sending conservative mail into spam. And of course, they said they weren't doing that, but 70% of Republican and conservative emails for fundraising goes into spam filters for Google, and that's Google that's doing that. That's happening all behind the scenes. So it's the big guys. It's the people that are market dominant in our marketplace that would be affected. Over a certain amount of million users, I think was the cap that we put on the bill. And so your little startups like the Parlors of the world still would have protection until they became market dominant.
All right, I want to turn to the border. Yesterday, you and some other members of the GOP held a press conference to suggest impeaching DHS Chief Alejandro Mayorkas. Let's take a listen to part of what you said.
The 98 known terrorists on the terrorist watch list are now released into our country. I can't think of a higher crime than releasing known terrorists into our country.
So what would the effect be if you did impeach Mr. Mayorkas?
Well, we'll open impeachment proceedings in the House Judiciary Committee so that the American people can hear all of the evidence of the laws that have been broken by this administration, so they can see for a fact the terrorists that have been allowed into our country, the illegals that have been allowed into our country, the gangs that have been allowed into our country, the record amount of fentanyl that is so much killing Americans is the leading cause of deaths between those 18 and 45. And I believe we have the support in the House to do it. The unfortunate piece of all of this, and I want to have people have reasonable expectations, it needs 60 votes in the Senate for him to be removed from office. So I think we can pass impeachment articles in the House, and then the question mark is going to be at the Senate. Are Democrats going to support, based on this mountain of evidence of the Constitution that was broken, his duties that were broken as the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, to remove him from office?
Well, Congressman, how is he not just doing what his boss is telling him? He works for the administration, and I understand you want to target him and bring into the clear of day, if you will, what's going on the border. But aren't these the policies of the Biden administration that you mainly have a problem with?
Yeah, they are. And I think through the impeachment proceedings, we'll get more and more evidence that he is getting his directive from the White House and from the president. And those would be grounds, impeachable grounds for the president. I think just on the laws that are being broken on our border. But Republicans, instead of rushing to judgment like the Democrats did in impeaching Trump twice, I think we're going to do it the judicious way, show the American people the facts and evidence and the laws that have been broken. And if that leads us to President Biden, and he's the one that is dictating what's happening on the border, then we should open impeachment proceedings for him as well.
Congressman Steube, thank you so much, sir.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
And the Central Bank of Afghanistan was